Okay, so to wrap up our class today, I don't have much time left. I want to look at the MATLAB. I want us to get going on the MATLAB things because that is important. That's a part of what I want to include in this class, some hands-on work. So I gave you the animation stuff, part 1 and part 2. I want to spend the time we have left just looking at the results and seeing if we can answer any questions or if you have any discussion on it. So I've opened up my MATLAB, and I have here what I have here are the files that I created as part of those demos, okay? Let's look at these together. So I'm assuming you've looked at that. I'm not trying to reproduce it, but I do want to open it up for some discussion. That video, those videos just walk through actually writing the code, so they're somewhat detailed. There were 2 steps to it. The first thing is the STL read, so there's a function I shared with you, or you can get off MATLAB Central. And you do an STL read of any file that you've created in CAD, some CAD software, and then saved as an STL. Or you could just go somewhere and find an STL. So you know, if you went to Thingiverse or you went to some robot manufacturer and they have CAD models or STL files of their parts, you can import it. In this case, my son drew a little box for me, asked him to draw a box, and he called it animation box, or I named it animation box, and so I'm importing it. When I import it, so let's run up to here. Hey, if you've used I think Drew's our MATLAB guy. Drew, do you use these sections? I've just done something here. Okay, I don't want to get too carried away, MATLAB. You can just ignore this, but you can, the editor lets you break things into sections. If you use a single percent sign is a comment, a double percent sign breaks things into sections. So here I've now broken this into a section and this is in a section. So if I want to run just this section, I can make it a standalone section and hit Control-Enter, and the program ran just this. It started off, here, let me go over. Okay, so I started off with a clear workspace over here. There's nothing in the workspace. I ran to this program. I'm not going to hit the run. I'm down here. Now you can't see this. I'm using my fingers. I'm hitting the Control-Enter. Okay, I just hit the Control-Enter. The program doesn't really show anything on the screen, but I can see here I've got this box, 1-by-1 structure, and then I've got this variable DTR. Let's look at box. Box was defined here. I used that function STL read, and it read in this STL file, and it gave me box. So let's look at box. So there's box. It tells me that box is a structure, a struct, which is a structure with the following fields: faces, vertices, face color, and edge color. Just as a quick aside, the STL read gave me faces and vertices in this case. Face color and edge color I had to define. I think there's a way to export face and edge colors when you do the STL right, but I don't know what that is. So I think it can be done, but I don't know how. So I don't know why I mention it. So this is my box. How do I get those things? What is this thing called a structure if you're not familiar? Well, it's just another variable type. It's typically self-defined. So let's look at it. So here I can see it's a structure and it's got the fields, faces, vertices, face color, and edge color. I want to look at faces. How do I do that? I go box.faces. By typing box.faces, that gave me all the faces. And it looks like face is, well, just as advertised, a 12-by-3 double array. If I type face.box.vertices, there I get the 36-by-3 double array. You know, if I want the first element in vertices, I would type box.vertices, and I want the first row all columns, and there gave me the first row all columns, which is effectively the first vertex of this box. It's located, the vertex, the coordinates are -5, 0, and -7.5, XYZ coordinates, and so on. So vertices are points on my body, and then faces are a face, a polygon that creates the surface. All right, that's how STL files are written. And then down here, I'm using this command called patch. This is where the magic comes in, patch. So patch recognizes if you have your information in terms of faces and vertices, patch recognizes it automatically. So I can just come down here and say patch box. And when I do that, I get a screen, I get the box animated, or I get the box, that's not very useful. But I get the box, I just drew the box. Let's do view 3. View 3 puts that figure in 3 dimensions. By default, it gives me a two-dimensional plot, but it's actually a 3-dimensional plot. So here's my box, and I can kind of grab around. I know it's a little awkward there, but there's my box, okay? I can peek at it all sides. Now in this case, I think I made the face colors be green and the edge colors be white. So that's what I get. Pretty dull looking, but the graphics can be anything you want. Now, the magic, so there's my box. And again, you know, well, from that simple beginnings, we can do a fair amount. The next thing that's how I draw the box. The next thing I want to do is move the box around. And again, this is a review of what's in the detailed tutorial, but I'm just bringing it up. And by the way, please interrupt at any point if you had questions on this. We've got just a few minutes left, but I'm really wanting this to be a discussion if you had some questions as you go through. I'm watching the chat, or you can just call in, shout out. So the next step is now, at the moment, I just have a static box. I want to, right now, do kinematics and move the thing around. So to move it, I'm going to do a combination of translation and rotation. Drew had brought up several times the concept of a homogeneous transformation, a 4x4 that does the motion, and that's excellent. In this case, though, I'm going to separate it into 2 individual steps, one of translation and then the second of rotation. That'll let me treating all the vertices as just 3x1 components. So for translation, I take any given vertice, I add to it a particular displacement. In this case, it's just some displacement in the X, nothing in the Y, nothing in the Z, and then I put it back into the original vertice. Here, this loop steps through all the vertices. So note I go from 1 to the length of the number of vertices. I translate each one, and then when I'm done, I draw the box. And so if we were to run this section of the code, let's run that section. I'm going to use this sections. So I've loaded the box. Now in this section, I'm going to run just this section of the code. So I hit Control Enter. And there I'm translating the box. So that little bit of code, it goes through pretty simple, but oops. Okay, it's just taking all the vertices, moving them slightly. In this case, slightly is dx. How much is dx? Dx was, oh, well, dx is here. So the translation is 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, all the way up to 10. I translate all the vertices by a small amount. I then clear the screen axes. So I clear the old box. I draw the box on the screen. I fix the axis size. I make it view 3. And then here's the magic. Then I pause it for a short window of time, just a real short, in this case, 50 thousandths of a second. Pause it for 50 thousandths of a second. Then I move the box again slightly, draw it again, pause. So it's like stop animation. It's just moving along step by step. But my eye integrates that in. So I can move here in this code, I'm moving it in the X. Moving along in the X. And I could move it in the, it's kind of odd. Okay, there's something odd. It's updating my, oh, I see why, okay. In this, the way I did this code, I keep updating my original location of the box. So I need to go back and run this, and then run this guy. Now, I could also move it in the Z. Here, I'm just going to give it the same coordinates in the X and the Z, so it's going to be moving over and up. I don't know if you can notice that. So that's translation. Now, for rotation, I do the same exact thing, only, which is to say I step over all the vertices and I take my rotation operator and act on each vertice. I rotate it, and then that, I rotate it. And in this case, I'm doing a translation as well. So I rotate and then translate, and I notice I always act on the original vertices, and that gives me a rotation. So let's see that briefly. The details of doing this rotation here are in that little bit of notes. Notice I have a transpose and then a transpose again, because originally the vertice is 5.
If we're quiet, can we move things in?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah. And I'm wrapping up here. So I've got, notice well, anyhow, I'm out of time. So I have a rotation and translation. Let's run this. Well, I guess I'm just going to run it from the beginning. Okay. So there's some discussion of order. All right. Let me wrap this up. Questions, comments before we meet on Thursday?